It started with a reflection that wasn't quite right. I had always considered myself a practical person, the type who laughed off ghost stories and never flinched at horror films. But that night, something in my own reflection made my stomach twist. I had just moved into my new apartment, a small, almost claustrophobic unit in a building that reeked faintly of mildew and something older, harder to define. The previous tenant had left in a hurry. At least that's what the landlord said. But the apartment felt lived in, or rather, half lived in, as if someone had left a piece of themselves behind. I was unpacking boxes, mostly books and kitchenware, when I first noticed it. I had hung the mirror above the dresser. Antique, dark wood, slightly warped, but it had been fine all afternoon. I leaned over to adjust a picture frame, and there it was, me, but not quite. At first, I thought it was just my tired eyes playing tricks. Maybe the shadows of the room, cast by the dim lamp, had made my face look sharper, my eyes darker. But then I saw it blink, and I hadn't. My reflection moved independently. I froze. The hair was the same, the shirt the same, but the expression was different, sinister, almost hungry. My heart pounded, yet my body refused to move. I could feel the heat of panic crawling up my neck. I told myself it was stress. Moving into a new place, adjusting to a different schedule, the loneliness, it had to be a hallucination. I stared at the mirror until the reflection mirrored my movements perfectly. Relief washed over me, though tinged with a deep, nagging unease. I tried to ignore it, dismissing it as imagination. But as the night grew longer, the mirror became a portal I couldn't look away from. I began noticing small differences, subtle distortions that I couldn't explain. One minute, my reflection would be perfectly aligned. The next, it would linger a fraction of a second too long, or tilt its head just slightly differently. The first time it smiled at me, I hadn't been smiling. My breath caught in my throat. I staggered back, tripping over a box, and the reflection didn't move, didn't stumble, didn't look surprised. It stayed there, grinning, teeth slightly sharper than they should have been. I laughed nervously, convinced it was a trick of the warped glass. I turned away, trying to focus on unpacking, but the sensation of being watched clung to me. Every time I glanced toward the mirror, I felt it, a presence that wasn't just my reflection, but something more, something that knew me intimately, perhaps even better than I knew myself. Sleep became impossible. I tried keeping the lights on, thinking the darkness was fueling my paranoia, but the reflection wasn't constrained by shadows. In fact, sometimes it seemed more animated when the room was lit. It would linger, its movements almost human, mimicking my actions, but with subtle, cruel exaggeration. One morning, I woke up to find a post-it on the edge of the mirror, written in my handwriting, but I knew I hadn't written it. It said, "You're late." My blood ran cold. I live alone. No one else had a key. I installed cameras, convinced I was being pranked, but playback showed nothing out of the ordinary. I checked the mirror, hoping for rationality, and for a few minutes, it behaved. Then it smiled. A slow, predatory smile. My knees buckled. That was the night I realized it wasn't just a reflection. It was something else entirely. I started noticing signs in other reflective surfaces, windows, spoons, even the screen of my phone. There it was, always there, waiting, patient. I tried confronting it. "Who are you?" I shouted one night, the apartment echoing with my own panic. The reflection just tilted its head, amused, as if it were studying me like an experiment. And then it moved closer, closer than any reflection should. Its lips parted, and I swear I heard a voice, soft, chilling, "Me." I stumbled back, falling into the dresser, breaking a vase. I scrambled to the door, but something in me wanted to look back. And when I did, my reflection was no longer confined to the glass. It lingered in the corner of the room, shadowy, yet undeniably shaped like me. The following days were a blur of terror. I tried covering every reflective surface, but the feeling followed me. Even in darkened rooms, I sensed it, always just behind me, breathing where I did. Sleep became a fading memory. I stopped eating properly. I stopped leaving the apartment. My friends called, worried, but I couldn't explain the thing in the mirror. They would have thought I'd lost my mind. Then it escalated. I woke one night to a whisper, so faint I could almost convince myself it hadn't happened. "You look tired." My reflection wasn't in the mirror. It was sitting on the edge of my bed, mimicking my sleeping posture perfectly, eyes open, staring at me. I froze. I wanted to scream, but couldn't. My throat locked. The figure tilted its head and whispered again, "It's easier if you come with me." I ran. I didn't care where, just out of the apartment, out into the streets. The city was quiet, almost eerily so, but it didn't matter. I could feel it trailing me, closer with every step. Streetlights flickered in my path, shadows twisting unnaturally. I glanced at shop windows, car mirrors, anything reflective, and it was always there, watching, waiting. I ducked into an alley, hoping to escape it, but the reflection appeared at the far end, grinning with malicious satisfaction. I called for help eventually. Police, friends, anyone, but no one saw it. No one could see it. I was alone in my terror, with a thing that only I could perceive. I thought about leaving the city, moving far away, but I realized it wouldn't matter. It wasn't confined to the apartment. It was part of me now, or perhaps I was part of it. The last night, I couldn't bear it anymore. I returned to the apartment, lights blazing, mirrors covered with sheets, everything that could reflect an image blocked. I waited, hoping that my preparation would protect me. The hours crawled. Silence. And then, the whispering returned, closer, all around me. "You can't hide. We are one." I turned to the mirror, the only uncovered one, trembling, tears streaming down my face. And it was there, not behind a glass, not separate, but looking out at me from inside my own body. Its eyes were mine, but darker, filled with a hatred I didn't know I was capable of. And then I realized, with a shudder that froze my very soul, that it had been me all along. The me I had seen smiling, tilting, whispering was the me that wanted to take over. I ran from the apartment again, and I haven't returned. But sometimes in the corner of my eye, I catch glimpses of myself. Not mine, not fully mine. In reflective surfaces, in windows, in the black screens of my phone. Watching, waiting, learning. I've started avoiding mirrors entirely, even at work, even at friends' houses. But it's always there, always patient, and I know one day I won't be able to tell where it ends and I begin. And sometimes, just sometimes, when I catch a fleeting glance of my own face, it smirks. I moved into the house on the outskirts of town on a rainy October afternoon, the kind of weather that makes everything smell damp and forgotten. The realtor had assured me it was charming, a classic fixer-upper with character. I had wanted a quiet place, away from the city's chaos, somewhere I could write without interruption. The neighborhood was empty, lined with gnarled trees whose skeletal branches clawed at the sky. The moment I stepped inside, though, I felt a heaviness I couldn't explain, a pressing weight that seemed to settle on my chest. The house itself was beautiful in a tired, decaying way. Wooden floors that creaked with history, walls peeling in places, and a fireplace choked with ashes. I spent the first day exploring, unpacking boxes, and imagining what it would be like to live here. The previous owners had left in a hurry, the realtor said. Furniture still remained in some rooms, covered in dust sheets. I brushed my fingers over the fabric, feeling static shock, and laughed nervously. It was probably just the dryness of the old air. Night came fast. The wind outside slammed against the shutters, rattling them violently, and the sound of rain hitting the roof became a steady drum. I tried to read, to ignore the house's creaks and groans, but it was impossible. Every step I took on the wooden floor sounded louder than it should, as if the house itself was listening, waiting. Around midnight, I began to notice it, the subtle whispering beneath the ordinary sounds. At first, I thought it was the wind or perhaps the pipes, but it wasn't random. It was soft, deliberate, murmuring words I couldn't quite catch. I froze, my eyes darting across the dark room. "Hello," I called, my voice cracking, but the only answer was silence and the faint, almost imperceptible whisper, "Upstairs follow." My heart skipped. I laughed nervously, thinking I was imagining it. Maybe the isolation, the exhaustion from moving, the cold. It was all making me paranoid. I tried to sleep, pulling the blankets tight, ears straining for the slightest sound. But sleep never came. The next morning, the house felt different. The air was heavier, thicker, as if it had absorbed my fear. I explored the upstairs, trying to ignore the whispering that returned whenever I lingered in a room too long. In one bedroom, the floorboards groaned in a way that seemed intentional. I bent down, examining them, and found nothing unusual. Yet as I stood, I could swear I heard a faint giggle, almost human, coming from the ceiling. I started to notice patterns. The whispers were no longer random. They seemed to follow me, guiding me from room to room. Sometimes it would start in the kitchen, urging me toward the hallway, other times beneath my feet, under the floorboards themselves. I tried to ignore it, to leave the house during the day, but something compelled me to stay. It was curiosity, and perhaps a growing terror that wouldn't let me leave. One night, around 2 in the morning, the whispers escalated. I was in the living room, reading, when the floorboards beneath me groaned sharply. The whispering grew louder, almost pleading, "Come, come." I try to rationalize it. Old houses creak, pipes shift, but then a floorboard at the far end of the room shifted unnaturally, like it had been pushed aside. My pulse raced. I crawled closer, shining my flashlight on the gap, and saw a blackness that seemed impossibly deep. I dropped the flashlight. My knees shook. From the darkness, the whispering became a chorus, urgent, excited, almost hungry. "Come, join us." I tried to back away, but the boards beneath me rattled, like the house was moving to trap me. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath forming faint clouds. Something wasn't human in that space beneath the floor. Something alive, patient, ancient. I fled to the stairs, tripping, falling, my ears ringing with the chorus that followed me, echoing through the walls. I slept little that night. The whispers never stopped, always just at the edge of hearing. I began to see shadows, fleeting, darting from corner to corner, always just out of focus. The house seemed to breathe, its walls pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. I started avoiding the upper floors altogether, leaving boxes stacked in front of the staircase to block whatever presence lived there. Yet still, I felt it, watching me, waiting, whispering. Days passed. I tried to document it, recording audio, taking pictures, but every time I reviewed the evidence, the whispers weren't there. Every picture of the floor revealed nothing unusual. Even the boards I had examined were ordinary, weathered wood, no sign of gaps or holes. And yet, I could feel it, always there, beneath my feet, the house alive in ways I couldn't explain. Then it began to communicate more directly. Not just whispers, but words, clear and deliberate, forming sentences that made my skin crawl. "You shouldn't be here. Come down. Play with us." I froze at the sound, my own voice trembling in response. "Who? Who are you?" Silence. Then a faint scratching from below, slow, deliberate, like fingernails raking over wood. The whispers began again, excited. "We're waiting. We've been waiting." I couldn't take it anymore. I packed a bag and tried to leave, but the house seemed to fight me. Doors slammed shut on their own. Windows would not budge. Even the car wouldn't start. It was as if the house itself had claimed me, binding me to the floorboards, to the whispers. Panic gripped me, cold and absolute, and I screamed until my throat burned. I tried staying awake, avoiding sleep at all costs, but exhaustion won. When I drifted into unconsciousness, the whispers became clear in my dreams. I was walking through the house, the floorboard alive beneath me, and from the darkness below, hands emerged skeletal, reaching, pulling. Faces pressed through the wood, grinning, whispering my name. I woke drenched in sweat, my heart hammering, but the scratching continued, faint, real, just beneath the floor. I contacted a medium, hoping for an explanation, some rationalization beyond haunted folklore. She came, an older woman with a kind face and wary eyes. She walked the house slowly, touching walls, floors, ceilings. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "This house, it's alive in a way I've never felt before. There's something beneath the floors. Something patient, feeding on fear, feeding on attention. It wants you, wants to claim you. You must leave before it knows how to take you fully." I thought about leaving immediately. But that night, the whispers grew louder, urgent, triumphant, as if aware of my plans. I tried to flee the upstairs, but the floorboards shifted beneath me, creating a path I couldn't escape from. And then I saw it, a shadow, moving under the floor, not just darkness, but something alive, rising toward me. My blood froze. I stumbled back, falling through the thin floorboard that had been loose, hitting the basement below with a sharp crack. The basement was dark, damp, smelling of earth and decay. The floor above me whispered, calling my name. I tried to climb back up, but the boards moved, shifting like they were alive, keeping me trapped. And then I realized the house had been patient for years, waiting for someone like me. Someone alone, someone curious, someone who could hear its whispers. It had claimed countless others, feeding on terror, adding to the chorus beneath the floors. I don't remember how long I was down there. Hours? Days? Time had lost meaning. I could hear the whispers, the laughter, the faint scratching, all around me. My phone was broken, my voice useless. The house had become everything, and I was a part of it now, a listener, a feeder. Sometimes, when someone passes by the house, they hear faint whispers from the floorboards. People assume it's the wind. They don't know the house has new voices now. And I am still here, trapped below, listening, waiting for the next person to move in, to hear my whispers, to follow me into the darkness beneath the floorboards. Because if you hear it, if you ever hear it, you won't leave. I didn't believe in haunted apartments. I never had. I had moved dozens of times in my life, in cities across the country, always looking for quiet places to work, to live, to exist without interruption. But when I stepped into apartment 4B on the 23rd floor of the old downtown high-rise, something fell off immediately. The lobby smelled faintly of damp carpet and metal. The elevator groaned as it ascended, and the air in the apartment was unnaturally cold, as if the walls themselves exhaled a slow, chilling breath. The place looked ordinary: beige walls, worn wooden floors, a kitchen with outdated appliances. But I felt watched the moment I stepped through the door. I chalked it up to nerves. New city, new apartment, that was all. I unpacked boxes, setting up my workspace near the window, which offered a view of the city lights, flickering like tiny stars swallowed by fog. For a few days, everything seemed fine. Then the small things started. I would glance up from my laptop and think I saw movement in the corner of my eye. Shadows, subtle shifts in the room that shouldn't have been there. I told myself it was exhaustion, the city's lights playing tricks. But the feeling persisted, like the apartment itself was aware of me, its attention focused entirely on my every move. The first night it became undeniable was the night I woke up to the sound of breathing. Not my own. I was fully awake, sitting upright in bed, but soft, slow, deliberate breathing coming from the darkness of the living room. I flicked on a lamp. Nothing. The shadows were still, the apartment silent, yet the sense of being observed clung to me. Over the next week, it escalated. Doors I knew I hadn't touched would be slightly ajar. My reflection in the windows seemed delayed, almost reluctant, as if the apartment itself wanted to observe me without being seen. Items I placed on counters would shift, ever so slightly, always in a direction that made me feel as if they were being positioned for someone or something to see. I started recording myself while I slept. I needed proof, something tangible. The first few nights were unremarkable, but on the third night, the footage made my blood run cold. On the screen, I was asleep, but a dark figure moved through the apartment with deliberate steps, gliding across the wooden floors without sound. It never approached me, at least not fully, but lingered near the edges of the frame, watching, waiting. I froze, unable to look away. My own breathing seemed deafening in the silence. I confronted the apartment, speaking aloud to empty space. "Who's there? What do you want?" Only silence answered me, but the room seemed to respond in other ways. A picture frame tilted, a chair shifted slightly, and the temperature dropped. I felt it, the weight of eyes pressing down on me, unseen but undeniable. Then came the whispers. Faint at first, almost like the wind passing through the cracks of the walls. But gradually words formed, low and deliberate. You shouldn't be here. Watch, watch. I pressed my ear to the floor, to the walls, to the ceiling, try to pinpoint the source. Nothing. Yet the words continued, repeating, growing clearer, growing louder, until I couldn't ignore them. I tried to leave, thinking a night away from the apartment might reset whatever was happening. But when I returned, everything had changed. Furniture subtly rearranged, a sense of deliberate order that hadn't existed before. My notes, which I had left stacked neatly, were scattered in patterns I couldn't decipher. And the whispers, they weren't coming from the walls anymore. They were in my head, echoing, persistent. You're part of it now. Watch, always watch. Sleep became impossible. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing the apartment breathe, creak, shift. I began noticing the patterns, the shadows that lingered just beyond the corner of my vision, the way the reflection in the window lagged behind my movements, the occasional sensation of a cold hand brushing my shoulder when I was alone. I reached out to friends, to strangers online, seeking explanations. They suggested stress, exhaustion, perhaps mild psychosis. But I knew better. The apartment was alive, in some way I could neither understand nor control. And it was hungry, not for food, but for observation, for fear, for attention. One night, I woke to the sound of the front door clicking. I didn't have a key in the lock, and no one should have been there. I crept toward the door, heart hammering, and found the hallway empty. The apartment was quiet for a moment, almost polite. Then the whispers returned, this time coming from the living room, urgent, excited. Look, look! Now you see. I followed them, compelled despite myself. In the middle of the room, the shadows on the floor had taken shape, forming patterns that looked almost like writing. The words were unreadable, flowing and shifting as if alive. I tried to step closer, and the patterns reformed, turning toward me, urging me to watch. I couldn't look away. The air grew thick, pressing in on me, and I realized with a sickening clarity that the apartment wanted more than my fear. It wanted me to participate, to observe, to surrender myself entirely to its presence. Days blurred together. I stopped going to work. I stopped answering my phone. The apartment became my entire world. I began to notice small changes in myself. My reflection seemed darker, my shadow lingering longer than it should, movements slightly delayed, as if the apartment had learned to mimic me. I tried recording again, but the footage revealed nothing unusual. The apartment was hiding itself, waiting for me to understand its rules. Then one night, I woke to a new sensation. I was not alone in my body. I felt a presence inside me, an awareness that was not mine, moving my fingers, tilting my head slightly, making my voice sound different when I muttered in my sleep. I panicked, thrashing against the invisible weight pressing from within. The apartment whispered urgently, "We are one. You see, you watch, you belong." I barricaded the door, covered the windows, stuffed towels into every crack to block the whispers. But still I could feel it, inside me, outside me, behind every wall, beneath every shadow. It knew me, studied me, anticipated my movements. I was no longer just a tenant. I was prey, participant, witness. I started keeping a journal, trying to document every event, every whisper, every shadow. But the apartment would interfere. Pages would be torn, words rearranged, letters scratched out, and rewritten in patterns I couldn't decode. And sometimes I would glance up from my writing, only to see my own shadow acting independently, lingering longer than my movements, stretching in impossible directions. Friends stopped calling. They stopped visiting. I no longer answered the phone. No one could understand. No one would believe me. I was alone, except for the apartment, which had become my entire reality. Last night, I saw something impossible. In the reflection of the kitchen window, the apartment itself seemed to move. The walls bent slightly, the ceiling arched like a living creature, and shadows pooled in corners that shouldn't exist. And in that reflection, I saw myself. My face, my body, but not quite. The eyes were darker, the grin too wide, the movements deliberate. It was me, yet not me. And it was smiling at me, urging me to watch, to surrender. I can feel it now, even as I write this. The apartment is alive, and it has learned me completely. I know it is only a matter of time before I cease to be myself entirely.